Welcome to the March 8th Education Committee and supplementary regular board meeting of the Lower Merion Board of School Directors. This meeting is being made public via Zoom and video recorded with sound for purpose of public broadcast. It is also being live streamed via our website. All participants will be muted upon entry. There will be an opportunity for public comment after tonight's presentations. The chat feature will be turned on at that time, and comments and questions will be read by the district solicitors. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge that continuing to navigate this global pandemic isn't getting easier for any of us. The plan Mr. Copeland and Ms. Schaefer are presenting tonight isn't perfect, but I find that nothing during COVID is perfect, and there are compromises and trade-offs that need to be made with each and every decision. We've received and read your emails and hear the concerns regarding isolation and mental health impacts on your students, concerns about social distancing and how best to ensure the most distance possible in those situations where 6 feet distancing won't be possible, and concerns about removing masks to eat while in school, among many others. Unfortunately, among the trade-offs is the reality that we do not have the staffing nor the facilities to offer a full in-person and a hybrid option, in addition to our fully virtual options. Our goal as a district continues to be to maximize our students' in-person school experience as safely and as best we can. And as it is International Women's Day, I would like to reaffirm our commitment to equity of all kinds for all of our students. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Copeland for the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. So today is March 8th. And it's an anniversary of sort. It was March 8th last year was a Sunday when it was first announced on the news that the first cases of COVID-19 in Lower Merion, actually in the area, were in Lower Merion. It was a couple. And we put out announcements about that for the following day. On March 9th, on my way to one of the schools, I learned that a student didn't necessarily test positive, but had been in a room with a healthcare worker who might have tested positive. We closed schools. We did whatever mitigation we thought we could at the time. And all of this was in the shadow of having prepared since mid-February for what we thought was going to be a 2-week closing. By the end of that week, the governor had closed all of the schools, and we went into a full remote situation with all of our students and our teachers. Throughout the rest of the spring, we learned a lot about what we could or couldn't do, or what we needed to know more of in terms of our program. Throughout the summer, we had even more staff development for our teachers and put together a complete summer program, and we did it at no cost for people so that we could deal with the beginnings of the whatever we weren't able to do during the spring at remediating and supporting of our students. When we opened in the fall, we looked at a variety of different programs. We initially thought we would do a 2-day program with a Wednesday in the middle for hybrid, and made the decision that consistency was better than that. And so we went to, in the elementary schools, a AM, PM program. And again, as President Klein says, not perfect, but I got to tell you, it went a lot better than I thought. When I walked into classrooms, particularly at the elementary level, and saw what elementary teachers were doing in the hybrid model with a small number of students, and our middle school and high school teachers who learned how to deal with students in front of them and students at home, I think they really did a great job. And so now we move to a point where what we want to do is recognize that having all students back in school is the best thing, but we want to make sure we do it safely, not perfectly, but knowing that there's risk, but also having learned a lot, keeping our mitigation programs in place and moving forward in the best responsible way possible. What we like to do tonight is share with you where we are now. The last meeting you heard from experts from CHOP, Children's Hospital, and you heard where the recommendations were. we're following those recommendations as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Megan Schaefer, Assistant to the Superintendent for Administration, and she and I will give a presentation, mostly her.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Can we see that? Great. So just to bring some more detail to the overview that Mr. Copeland just shared, we're going to talk about the overview of our full return plan, and we're going to talk a little bit about why now. We know that's on people's minds, and then talk about our next steps. So in terms of an overview, this is sort of the shortest summary we could put together for you. Our intent is to have all schools open for increased or full return of students beginning the week of March 22nd. And we're going to look at a slide a little bit later that breaks that week down because there is a little bit of a difference between secondary and elementary. That we will continue to provide a fully virtual option to any family for the remainder of the 2021 school year. At the high school and middle school level, what that means is that current classroom teachers will continue with both in-person and virtual students on their roster. So much like what's been happening throughout the year at the high school level will continue. At the middle school, it will look a little bit more like the winter flex model. At the elementary school, our plan at this time is to allow families seeking a fully virtual option to be enrolled in Lmsb at home. However, if our numbers are significantly higher than what our expectations are, we may have to rework that a little bit, but that's dependent on the outcome of people's families' final decision on that piece. And then finally, what you're going to hear tonight is sort of the district level overview. And I know that families have a lot of questions about what it's going to look like for their child in their classroom or in the building that they're assigned. So what we've lined up, as you probably have already heard or seen, each building, the principal will be delivering informational sessions over the course of the next 3 evenings to talk a little more about what it looks like in a school building with the changes in terms of bringing more students into classrooms, what that will look like for things like arrival and dismissal, what lunches will look like, classroom setups, etc. Throughout this entire process, our staff has worked tirelessly to make sure that we are maintaining distancing in accordance with our plan to the extent possible. 6 feet is the rule, but that's not always going to be the case in terms of a full reopening. And we'll talk a little bit more about where that may look different in classrooms in particular. And then there's also the other major change that will happen as a result of the change in schedule, which is transportation routes. So currently we're already working on rerouting students based on what we do know right now, so that there will likely be new transportation assignments sent to families or available to families over the next couple weeks. This is a calendar view, and I know that it's hard to read, but all of this will be available to you following the meeting. But I did want to highlight what is highlighted is information that will begin to be available to you beginning tomorrow, which is if you want or decide that you want to change your child's current placement, whether they be in the hybrid or in-person model or fully virtual, there's going to be a form available to you to indicate that you would desire a change to your child's placement. So there's going to be more detail in a letter sent to you about that change. And what we're doing is making that link live. So we know some families have already made a decision and want to indicate that to us as soon as possible. And we know other families want to hear a little bit more about what that's going to look like. And that's why that form will be open until Sunday, so that families can see those information sessions first, and then hopefully get their questions answered so that they feel comfortable submitting the form or telling us what direction they want to go. That following week, once the forum closes, we will make our final accommodations for the students that are returning in person and those that are asking to remain virtual if there are changes to those numbers. You'll see there's some scheduling adjustments that will also be announced on the Friday and the Monday, the 22nd. So our plan, and Dr. Gaudioso and Dr. McGloin will talk a little bit about what those schedules will look like in a minute. But I did want to note that the week of the 22nd is when we intend to return to a full reopening plan. That will be followed by the spring break, and then again resuming the full plan the week of April 8th. So, in talking about the return plan for elementary, Dr. Gaudioso could jump in here and share a little bit about what that first week will look like for families.
Sure. So on the week of the 22nd, students will have a modified schedule as they return, and they will be attending school for full days on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of that week. Monday, March 22nd, will be a virtual asynchronous day for all students. And during this time, teams of teachers and principals are going to be working on some fine tuning and preparing for students as they return. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, as students are working in full days, teachers are going to be reflecting and taking note of what works well, what is effective, what needs revision. And, I just want to point out here, the teachers are highly committed to making sure that students are not only safe, but also engaged. And when we consider first graders, for example, who have not been in a full day of school at all yet, these are things that the teachers are going to be monitoring for the social, emotional well-being of students, supporting student engagement, and really just being thoughtful and reflective about making sure students are safe when we're following health and safety guidelines to the greatest degree, but also that we're really monitoring how we can make sure that that the design really is supportive of students, because it will be a big transition for them. Each of the buildings has PLC structures for teachers to collaborate together. Principals have worked hard to modify special area schedules and master schedules and lunch schedules to support this transition to full return. And the teacher level planning to reconfigure intervention groups and to take into account those students who may be changing pathways. Some of that work will be happening this first week. And what's really important is that our teachers treat this similarly to the start of the school year, where we focused on the social, emotional, community building for students. These two A and B cohorts are coming together. So that first week will really be very student-centered, student-focused, and as much as the teachers will be really designing to fine-tune and support the students, it will be also a transition for students, especially our youngest learners who have not yet had the stamina to do full days in school. So starting following spring break on April 5th, students will be resuming a full 5-day in-person schedule. And we look forward to having all of the students back in the building and really just continually refining this as we move forward through the spring and really try to restore normalcy and really that sense of community and collaboration.
Thank you, Dr. Padia. So next we'll take a look at the secondary return. Dr. McGloin.
Yes, thank you. So as Mrs. Schaefer had noted before, secondary schools will return to 4-day-a-week instruction effective March 22nd. Our students at the secondary level will attend both as a Zoomie and a roomie. And what that means is that we will have students in front of our teachers at the same time that we have virtual students, and that is 6 through 12 moving forward. And so due to that, on Fridays, we need time to offer office hours to deliver one-to-one and small group instruction for our virtual learners. Typically, what's happened traditionally this school year is that we see not only students meet with their teachers during their office hours, but we're finding that teachers also meet with approximately 20 to 30 more students to support them on Fridays. And so that is necessary moving forward as we progress to our 4-day-a-week return. Lunch and Learn at the high school has been eliminated, and as Mr. Copeland noted, we will not institute that again this school year. And so because of that, we have to do our advisory on Friday and offer our systematic supports during that time. The Learn Block at the middle school has also been truncated because of the need for modified schedules for both lunch and dismissal. And so Friday is the time where we have an extended learn period and we can offer our systematic supports. In addition to that, mental health is really something that's so important to us. And that's when we're able to offer counseling sessions, group counseling sessions, family meetings, and other counseling supports. And this time on Friday allows us to do that without students missing class time and have it be less impactful to their learning. And so we really believe that the 4-day schedule will be beneficial to continue as we move into our full return. And that will be the plan effective March 22nd.
Thank you, Dr. Loin. Moving on, one of the big questions that we know that people have on their minds is why now? Why is the time right for us to be moving in this direction? We continue to adhere to guidelines issued by the CDC, Department of Health, as well as listen to experts that have been, now that we have unfortunately a year of living with this, we know a lot more. We're better at what we're doing, and I think we're prepared to take this next step with the strategies that we have in place. Importantly, we're seeing numbers declining in terms of positivity and case incidents locally, fortunately also statewide and nationally. We are very excited to be recipients of vaccines for our staff that are going to be available to us this week. So by this time next week, we will have the majority of our staff having been offered the vaccine or have taken the vaccine by then. We know that there's evidence locally and across the Commonwealth of the ability to reopen schools safely. As Mr. Copeland and mentioned earlier, there's no risk-free way of doing this, unfortunately, but we are not seeing significant in-school transmission, nor is that being reported to us from experiences across the state. Also, starting before spring break gives us a little bit of time to evaluate our protocols and make adjustments. We're starting out very conservatively to make sure that we're in a position to maximize distancing that I mentioned before. And we want to make sure that that's working and have the ability to make any adjustments that are necessary during that break period. And, as a district, while it feels uncomfortable, change always feels uncomfortable, we think we are ready. We've increased and improved our multi-layered mitigation strategies. We feel it's time to offer more robust in-person learning opportunities for our students, and we know that the majority of our families are asking for that. So, as I mentioned, we monitor the local data that's provided to us through the Office of Public Health. We see those numbers declining. The overall trend across the county and across the state is a downward one, which is really important. The trend numbers are important to us. We know that there are going to be blips that may spike for a week and then continue to decline. We watch these numbers closely. We consult with our local health experts about what they mean, what they're seeing, so that we can make decisions in accordance with their insights as well. But we are seeing those downward trends as a positive. We are, continue to see fewer cases in our schools. These are numbers that we've been sharing with you all along. We are pleased that that's the case. As we've said on several occasions, we are seeing very low transmission rates within schools. Well, even where case numbers were high, we were not seeing case transmission within our schools, which we feel strongly is due to the mitigation measures that we have in place. As I just mentioned, our staff will receive a large number of vaccines this week. So we're excited to move forward with that. I think that's an important piece, although it was never an absolute requirement that we would have vaccines in place a few weeks ago. It didn't look so great that would be even a possibility. So we were planning for a fuller return, irrespective of that. But this certainly is important for our staff. We're really excited that this is taking place. So we consider that a factor in our reopening plans. We also know that the guidance indicates that we should prioritize, maximizing in-person learning while balancing safety concerns. That the CDC guidance stresses the importance of in-person learning. The CHOP Policy Lab guidance that they've been issuing more recently talks about while the specific metrics are important to watch, what is equally, if not more important, and these are my words summarizing what I read, is that those mitigation measures, the multiple mitigation measures, are even more important. I mentioned before, and this was reviewed at the curriculum committee meeting last week, which is the family survey. This is just one of the slides that was shared, but it does indicate that our families are largely looking for a full-time in-person return this spring. We do note that there are a number of families out there that aren't sure yet, which is why, again, we have in place these meetings following this week to hopefully give you a better sense of what it will look like so that you can make a decision that you're comfortable with. As I mentioned before, I like this visual. I think it's an important one. It really, I think, emphasizes the importance of those multi-layered strategies, so that if one isn't working, if one isn't adhered to with 100% fidelity, others are in place. The masking is important. The distancing is important. The hand washing, the sanitizing, the ventilation. Now the vaccines, all of these measures are in place here in the district, and from what we can tell are working quite well. The CDC's 5 key mitigation strategies, we looked at this slide, I believe it was in February at the board meeting. I think it's important to note that's areas that we focus on. Those are areas in our health and safety plan that are addressed with specificity. The additional prevention strategies that are noted are the assurance testing, which we have now in place and have had in place for a couple months now. We're actually well over our second month into this program, and then the vaccines, which I mentioned before. So I think those two are key as well, because I think, unlike maybe other places, we are able to say that those things are happening in this district at a high level. I think another important piece is, if you recall from that last slide, the masking and the distancing are important mitigation strategies. And I thought that the responses that we received from staff about those key mitigation strategies were important, because what we talk about is that we feel really good that we have a high level of compliance here in this community. And I think this gives us some affirmation of that from the standpoint of the adults in our buildings, being able to say with in response to the survey that they feel pretty good that that those measures are taking place most of the time or always. That being said, I think it's also important to share that there are concerns that staff has. This isn't again a move that we are taking lightly and without sensitivity to the way in which our staff feels and the way in which our families feel about this. And we are doing our best to respond to questions and concerns that are coming from staff and from families. One of the things that we did last week was invite staff to participate in a webinar with Doctors Rubin and Coffin to answer their specific questions about the full return. As I mentioned, some of the enhancements that since we last updated I shouldn't say I mentioned yet, but some of the enhancements that have taken place since we last updated our health and safety plan, which is also on the agenda tonight for approval, are the installation of the bipolar ionization filtration products in all school cafeterias and in high school gymnasiums. The assurance testing, which I've mentioned already, that's happening at a high level across our staff. And we're pleased to report that case positivity is very low among staff. And we will continue that program even post-vaccinations in accordance with the guidance that we're receiving from both the Office of Public Health and the CHOP Policy Lab. Student participation in assurance testing has already started in places around our athletic program. We will likely be increasing that, again, in accordance with the Office of Public Health and the guidance of the CHOP Policy Lab. As mentioned, the health and safety plan is being recommended for approval this evening. The large, well, I should say there aren't significant revisions to the plan. The plan was updated to incorporate some of the strategies that were just mentioned. By design, the plan was originally accounted for the various modes we may be operating in. So, for example, the social distancing was mentioned in there that as early as September, should we return fully, that we would not be able to maintain the 6-foot distancing, but that it's important that we continue to ensure that regardless of the mode of our operation, that we are maintaining the distancing to the greatest extent possible. And in all cases, we are looking to ensure that distancing is a minimum of 3 feet. However, in most cases, we're seeing 6 feet, and across our lunch plans, we are requiring the 6-foot distancing, which I know is an important question that families have. I would also mention on this slide the contact tracing. I know that comes up, and I know that is an area of concern, because as we minimize the distancing in this case, there will be a greater need to engage in contact tracing. I think our contact tracing program has been very successful this year. We have a dedicated team of nurses that spend a great deal of their time working on this in collaboration with the Office of Public Health. We work with families, connect families with testing centers, and do the follow-up that's necessary to ensure that the community members within our school community are identified and quarantined as appropriate. This is again a slide that has been updated slightly since the last time we looked at it. The March, in the way it was revised, was to add the March 2021 date is the recommendation of a full return of students, which we've already talked about. Finally, some of our next steps, again, not intended to be all-inclusive. We will continue to prepare for a full return, operationally, logistically, furniture-wise, spacing-wise, tent-wise, all of those things that we've ordered that are in place that need to be, moved or set up. We are doing those things. Again, the rapid testing continues and increases where appropriate. The vaccine program is as I mentioned, hitting a peak moment. We will conduct the family presentations that I mentioned earlier. One of the important points I think is in all of this is that, you know, as fortunate as we are to be in a position to, I think, be moving toward a safe, full reopening, this is not going to be a normal situation. Students aren't going to be walking back into the building experiencing the same kind of social interactions, the freedom to move about, to gather in you know, at small groups and tables, the way that they were able to do so in January. And we know that you know, is going to require some work on our part to make sure students are ready for that, and that we, you know, continue to support their mental health, their social growth in ways that are new to us in the context of a pandemic, but that are you know, critically important to us. So we're headed into our next new normal with this phase. Again, the spring pathway commitment form will be open tomorrow. You'll be receiving a communication from us with more details about that, and it will be open for a week. And my light just turned off in my office. Just to give a few details of the commitment form here, this is the next step in the process. You will get some, the communication we'll receive will have some more details about this, but I just thought it was important to note that there are, you know, limited choices, but choices by level that will look a little bit different, and will have an attached explanation when you receive the communication about that. So for example, if I'm an elementary family, I have a student that goes to school, is considered a hybrid or an in-person learner, you may request LMSD at home, and our plan right now is for that to be an option for you. That being said, our students that are in LMSD at home that are fully virtual at the elementary level, if there is a request to return to our full return option, those students will need to be placed on a wait list, because we really need to make sure that we have the capacity and availability of space for to accept new students out of that program, because as we had rolled that out in the beginning of the year, that was intended to be a full year commitment. So again, there are some options available to families. We hope that, again, tonight's presentation as well as the building level presentations will help you make that decision if you haven't already made it. And so I think this is, last slide is just the same calendar we looked at before. I don't think we need to go through it again, but just the reminder that to be on the lookout for that spring pathway commitment form that will be sent to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Megan. Board questions?
Great, yes, thank you. If the board members could use the raise hand function, that would be helpful. I'm going to jump in first, though, and start by saying or letting everyone know that now that we are considering full in-person school days, I wanted to note that the board is also working toward holding our evening meetings, our full board meetings in person as well, most likely starting in April. We still have some details to work out. And they will also continue to be live streamed. Committee meetings, however, will continue to be held via Zoom, since many of those are held during the school hours. So I just wanted to put that out there as we are starting this conversation about returning to in full person. So we can start with some board questions. Ms. Ackman. You're on mute, Lori.
Sorry, thank you. And thank you for the presentation and all the thought and planning that's been going on. This has been such a stressful year for everyone. So I appreciate all the ways you've tried to balance the needs of family, students, staff, and everyone. So I just, I think at the last board meeting, you mentioned the purchase of tents and the use of outdoor space. I assume that families can hear more details about that at the individual school presentations, but is there like a district-wide policy that you're encouraging outdoor use, or, when relevant? I just wanted to get a sense of that.
Well, it's not a district policy. I mean, what we said was we wanted to give the opportunity for flex space or lunch space or just break space. And so the operations department with Mr. Lill and Mr. Witt traveled to each facility, worked with the principal on where would be a good space opportunity for a tent. Obviously, if it's not raining, you don't have to be underneath the tent, but that's what it's for. They're not going up just yet because there's still a chance that it could snow, and they're not weather. But each facility has a different layout, and I'm sure the principals will discuss that at their meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Thank you. So I also wanted to thank you for all the work you've put into putting this plan together over the last few months. A number of, many families across the district are going to be happy with a return to full reopening. But I think, a number of families will also be concerned. So I'm happy to see that you're offering a pathway to opt out of that. So I'm glad that we're offering that to parents. For the folks that are going to opt for the full reopening, I'm also glad to see that we're going to try to keep 6 feet in the cafeterias, because that's going to mitigate the need to do extensive contact tracing should we have some transmission or infection in schools. Can you talk a little bit about what's going to happen on buses, because that's going to be another place where kids are going to be in close contact?
Sure. Let me just also indicate that in terms of the options for families, clearly the secondary schools are an easier option. Where things do get a little bit tricky is the elementary, because of the Lmsb at home, the flex, and so forth and so on. So we'll have to see how that turns out at the survey level. In terms of the buses, there will be theoretically twice as many students who are riding the buses as there are now. However, we have very small ridership. What transportation is doing right now is rerouting the routes, because even though there's still small numbers, it's going to make different times. And so families can expect to get new pickup and drop off times. But Mr. Lill, I assume there's going to be assigned seating for contact tracing and that kind of a thing, because we'll have more students on the bus, correct?
That is correct. As you stated, all the routes are being reevaluated so that we can maximize distance, and then parents will be receiving updated bus information before the restart.
Thank you. Dr. Gilbert?
Thank you. I have 2 questions, if that's okay, or I can wait for the next one, whatever you want. Okay. Again, thank you to Superintendent Copeland and his entire team, who's been doing an incredible job and have been planning for all of these different options since last summer. One question I have is that I know a lot of families are concerned about the timing of returning. In other words, after Thanksgiving and after the winter break, we had some time because unfortunately, not everyone is listening to the advice to stay home unless absolutely necessary. Can you explain why that would be different if it is at this time, since you're recommending, you're recommending a different
Sure, that was a pointed question that myself and other superintendents asked both the folks from CHOP and the Office of Public Health. And the general thought was a bunch of things are coming together. There's a warming nature, so that you don't have the cold. I'm told that there's seasonality to the viruses, and we're coming out of a bad season, going into a good one. The ability for significant more vaccines that are out there, and they all just said that they didn't see the same kinds of concerns going after the spring break that they did for both Thanksgiving and the winter break. Having said that, we did see a little blip after President's Day. And what we saw, a lot of folks saw, because people let their guard down and had events or small events. Now, we didn't get super spreader events. We didn't get those kinds of things. So we feel confident that we can go the week after after spring break. But that also goes along with a plea to not do anything that's going to put any kind of large parties or super spreader events. But those two offices suggest that we're in solid ground.
Okay, so they're saying that this is a qualitatively different situation, which is why they're recommending. Okay, thank you. My second question is looking at the schedules. I know that at the secondary level, Friday is an asynchronous day, and that at the elementary level, that is not the case. I know that there are some teachers that are concerned about that, and I'm wondering if you or perhaps if you could address that.
Sure.
Whoever you would like to address that.
There are different programs at the elementary, middle, and high school level. I'll ask Alexis and Jennifer to weigh in if they want.
Sure. Jen, either one of us could go first. Why don't you go?
Alexis, why don't you go first?
Okay. So we are running both virtual and in-person learning at the secondary level. So our teachers have students in front of them and they have students on the computer. So the need for the Friday asynchronous day is due to the fact that we do need to support the students who are at home that we don't have the ability to support during the week. And so that time is for one-on-one instruction, small group instruction, and office hours for our virtual learners. In the elementary school, our intention at this point is to have all of our students be face-to-face. Our students that choose the 100% virtual option, we intend to try to put them in Lmsb at home. And so our teachers have their students with them 100% of the time, and they will be running the same schedule as they ran last year. And so for that reason, we felt like it was essential for us to offer the Friday asynchronous time at the secondary level, but not at the elementary level. Dr. Gaudioso, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, and just to remind folks, it was the hybrid schedule that warranted that the change in Fridays, because with the hybrid schedule, teachers did not have any time during the day. And any of the meetings, that normally would happen, preparation time, small groups of students. So there was a schedule in place that had features that warranted us looking at that Friday asynchronous. Part of it was that the teachers were working with students from at home while they were asynchronous in cohort B or cohort A, while they had students in front of them, and they were supporting students who were Zooming in. So those extra layers are removed, and we're as best as possible trying to return to a regular schedule, which now aligns with what kindergarten has been doing all year. Kindergarten's been on the regular schedule all year and did not have the asynchronous Fridays because they didn't have those extra layers of responsibility. So we're just kind of aligning, we're aligning K to 5 again here.
And if necessary, we'll look to add other supports and work with principals and staff to improve on that.
Okay, thank you, because I know that all of us on the board and the administration are, incredibly grateful to our teachers, all of our professional staff and support staff for just, the support they've given our students and each other, and also their flexibility, and it's really been amazing. So I just want to make sure that we,
without a doubt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. I'm going to jump in here and ask a follow-up question on this particular topic. One of the other things that the board will be voting on tonight is an addendum to the right at school for additional staff at the elementary level. Can you speak to that, Mr. Copeland? Because I think that the way I understand it is that would help so that the teachers will have support like during lunch and things like that.
Yeah, that's most of their responsibility will be supervision as we dedensify lunches. We simply don't have enough cafeteria recess aides, and so we developed a relationship with Right at School so that those folks can come in, and it's going to look differently in different schools. In some cases, we've provided a stipend for teachers to act in that capacity, and but we also want to enter into an agreement with Right at School, mostly for the cafeteria to help dedensify. That doesn't mean that we might not find other uses for that kind of supervision.
Thank you. Mr. Mooring?
Thank you. Two quick questions. One around just the timing of the commitment form. So am I reading the calendar right, that it will close? Parents will have to make a decision by midnight Sunday. So and the reason I'm asking is that our information meetings go through Thursday, and so essentially we're giving folks the weekend to make a decision and whether or not we think there's any more time allotment that might be needed for that. And then I'll just, before you answer, I'll ask my second question, which is around school closure and around breakouts. So are we still following the same protocol that was in place during hybrid, if by chance there is any breakouts at schools around the need to close or quarantine?
Yeah, sure. So on the first one, I think we've learned a little from the fall. We had a long period for folks to make up their minds, and people went back and forth and back and forth. In this case, we really need to have a better sense as soon as we can about what folks' intentions are. And I think people have had some opportunities to think about that, even without the principals having that session. That session, I think, will help people who are really conflicted one way or the other. In terms of outbreaks, I'm going to ask Mrs. Quinlan to talk about outbreaks.
Thank you. In terms of that chart that was provided to us before from the Department of Health, that's really no longer in existence. They updated that, I believe it was last week, and they will only recommend closures for linked cases in the school setting. And that would be determined on a case-by-case basis as to the type of outbreak and the number of cases and so forth. So they found that it really isn't necessary to have school closures, even if they're increased numbers, unless there's linkages between the cases.
Thank you. Ms. Kalish?
Thank you, Ms. Klein. So my question, let me think about a better way to phrase this. The proposal that you've put forth sounds really great, and I'm really excited about it. My one thing that I have my own personal reticence on is the fact that we won't be able to guarantee 6 feet in the classrooms, and I was hoping that Ms. Quinlan, if you could talk a little bit about what you were thinking in terms of a smaller distance being acceptable, and Mr. Copeland, in the unfortunate occasion that we were to have link transmission, possibly as a result of those shortened distances, what the process would be to roll back the full reopen.
Before Terry responds, let me say that one of the things that we really had to work through is our enrollment. We are one of in some years, the fastest growth school district in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Pardon me. It's the reason we're building a third middle school. So when folks say, well, how come school X or Y or Z can do it? Largely, it's because they either have a stable or declining enrollment, and that's one of the things that we had to fight against. So recognizing that, I think we've done the best we can in terms of that. So Terry.
Sure. I think the optimal distance and what's recommended is 6 feet to the extent possible, but that becomes even more important in the absence of a lot of other mitigations. I really think that Megan's illustration of the Swiss cheese layers is a good example of what we're doing. I think that we're still aiming for 6 feet, and we'll keep 6 feet where that's really important, and that's at mealtime and during other higher risk activities. But we know that we do have even stronger mitigations than we've had before. We know that our students, even our youngest learners, are very compliant with masking. We know that our self-screening and reporting by our families has been phenomenal. We have a very responsible and cooperative community that's used the COVID helpline to report and communicate information. We do have all that evidence of low in-school transmission. And one of our most important mitigation measures has been the implementation of the rapid testing program. And through that, we're able to give our staff and our families assurance that we are not seeing these high levels of transmission in the school setting. So distancing becomes more important when you're at high incidence levels, but we're really seeing those lower levels of infection in the school setting. And also between the vaccine and the availability, not only of rapid testing in the school setting, but outside of school, we're seeing all these stronger layers of mitigation. That doesn't eliminate the need for distancing, but we want to keep that in the areas where it really matters and is really important.
Thank you. I actually wanted to ask a couple of follow-up questions to that point. One about contact tracing and quarantining for those, if there's a classroom where it's not quite 6 feet, will there likely be more quarantining and contact tracing that is necessary? And how would that work? Would it be a full classroom? Would it be, assigned seats where you knew who the students were around a particular student?
Yeah, well, that's something that we'll be learning as we go along. We would certainly recommend assigned seating because the Department of Health is going to stick to the 6 foot distancing for contact tracing purposes. So we would need to look at that area around a student, and it could be a larger number of students quarantined in response to a student infection. Having said that, though, what we anticipate is lower numbers of infection overall. So while we may have larger numbers of students quarantined, we would have less infection and less need to do that. Another recommendation that's been provided to us is that we offer to test out of quarantine. And by that, I mean that students who are infected or are quarantined because of an in-school transmission, rather than quarantining the full 10 days, we could rapid test them on day 7 and they could return on day 8. So our goal would be to get back students as quickly as possible. Also, another option within the classrooms, I think especially in the elementary setting would be podding or cohorting of students into smaller groups within the classroom, so that if there was an infection, it would mean a quarantine of just that small group of students and not the larger class.
Thank you. In terms of thinking about a teacher quarantine, what would happen in that case? I know that that's sort of a staffing issue, and that statewide there's, a real lack of substitute availability. It's, I know many districts are having troubles finding substitutes. Is there a plan in place for that?
Well, I think we're going to be turning the corner on that with the number of staff that we're having vaccinated, and knowing now that if they're fully vaccinated, they will not be required to quarantine. So I think within a very short time, that problem will resolve.
Thank you.
That's a problem we've been dealing with throughout the year.
Right. Thank you for that. I hadn't connected those dots around the vaccinations. And related to that, with the ACIT assurance testing, if so, the largest group of tests now, if I understand correctly, is of staff. And if the staff is vaccinated, will there continue to be that ongoing testing? And I'm just wondering if there's less testing of staff, if that, knowing that there's a finite number of tests available, that opens up for more testing available to students or other ways to utilize those tests.
I've asked that question twice and I keep getting the same answer. They're recommending that the assurance testing continue. Of the staff, okay.
Yeah. Yes, at least until there's a further recommendation from the Department of Health. But as we planned earlier, we are open to, and we've submitted a plan to increase the number of students tested, not only in athletics, but in the arts and other activities where there may be higher risks, such as music and drama, so that these students will have that opportunity to be rapid testing, as well as testing out of quarantine, and then perhaps testing before some key significant events such as graduation and proms and things like that.
Thank you. Ms. Finger?
Thank you. For families who may be hesitant about the less than 6 foot distance in a classroom, even though it may be 6 feet from student to teacher and, teacher to teacher, but yet who either they need their child back in school or they really want their child back in school, or a combination of the two. What, in addition to the MERV filtering and the bipolar ionization, et cetera, is there anything else that you would say to these families to reassure them or recommend to them? For example, would you suggest that they use the paper masks underneath a cloth mask, or the paper mask because it's what the medical professionals use?
Well, my understanding is that masks do protect you, but the double mask also protects other people. So I think it's that's going to have to be an individual family. What I would also say is we've hired a firm that sort of roams the buildings. They do enhanced cleaning, and so that's also something we do. Terry, masks.
Well, I to reassure people, I would say that we look at the overall incidence of cases, and I think I looked at a week's worth of data, the most recent we had, and for 63,000 people in Lower Merion, there were 69 cases. And so we could figure that you're probably going to see a little more than one case per 1,000 students. And right before this meeting, I looked over my numbers for the rapid testing too. And out of more than 6,000 tests, we had 6 positives, and those people we were able to remove and isolate right away. So I think you have to look at that and think that the overall risk is rather low, although that might not be an acceptable level of risk for everyone. And where it's important to families, I mean, some might feel more comfortable double masking or wearing a surgical mask and a cloth mask. That's certainly not a requirement, but you know, some people might feel more comfortable doing that. So I would encourage families to do what they need to do to feel a little bit more comfortable, but to also feel free to reach out to the COVID team, and we can talk them through some of their concerns too and give them some updated information.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I'm going to ask one last question, and I ask the other board members if you have additional questions to use that feature again. I wanted to ask about the ventilation as well, in terms of there have been suggestions that, you know, the classrooms open windows if they have them, and I would like to learn a little bit more about that and within our schools.
Sure. So when I ask the question of our engineers, they go, it depends. We've got a very good HVAC system that gets about 7 air changes, and is that per hour, right, Jim? And so sometimes opening the windows doesn't have an effect, and sometimes it can have not necessarily a good effect. You want to talk about that, Jim?
So as Mr. Copeland stated, all of our occupied spaces have mechanical ventilation, so there is no stagnant areas that people occupy. Opening the windows is really a function of the outside temperature. If it's too cold, it's going to pull down the temperature in the space. As we move into the warmer months, the heat and humidity, that open window will now introduce warm, humid air that the system can't treat. Also, you have allergens and other particulates outside of the building that if you open the window, it does not get filtered, and our ventilation systems do filter it. So if it is a 60, 65 degree day and I see a window open on a classroom, it's really not going to cause me concern in terms of the performance of the HVAC system. However, it does bypass the temperature and humidity controls that we have, and it also provides unfiltered air, which could potentially cause other potential allergens, things of that nature.
We had a couple of times during the winter where we had short-term power outages, and we absolutely said, open up the windows, get some ventilation in here until we can get the HVAC system going.
Okay, thank you very much. See, I'm not seeing any more board questions, so I think we should, Mr. Copeland, unless you had anything that you wanted to add, that we would move on to audience recognition.
I think we're good to go.
Great, thank you. So at this time, we're going to allot 10 minutes for audience recognition and public comment. In a moment, Mrs. LaPera will open the chat feature and the timer will appear on the screen. Please begin your comment with your full name and where you reside within the district. It doesn't need to be street, neighborhood is perfectly fine. And that's necessary in order for the comments to be read. So that we will have the opportunity to hear from everyone. There's a limit of 1 comment or question per person. And these will all be read by Mr. Roos, our solicitor, at the end of the 10 minutes. Ms. LaPera?
It's open.
Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Mr. Roos, are you ready to start reading the public comment?
Yes, I am. Is the volume okay?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Copeland, you'll let me know when to stop.
I will.
Adam Olenek, College Park in Ballackinwood. Is it feasible to choose virtual option for my children and then change to in-person in April or May, when as a parent, I am more likely to be vaccinated? Amy Kribsky, Bala Cynwyd. Thank you so much for returning students to mostly in-person learning. Since March 2020, students in hybrid have had 30 days of in-person learning and have suffered for it. Thank you for working so hard and moving forward with a plan. Jennifer Bailey, Penn Win. We are so grateful for the leadership that has to tackle all the logistics and problems. With the possibility of students needing to quarantine, will there be anything in place so that the students don't lose out on all the instruction time for those 7 to 10 days?
I'm sorry, could you read that again?
With the possibility of more students needing to quarantine, will there be anything in place so that those students don't lose out on all those instruction time for those 7 to 10 days?
So again, I think if we can get assurance testing, we can reduce the amount of time that they're out. But they would be under a similar situation if they had sick days, correct, Terry? Yeah.
That's correct. Yes.
And there was an individual question about coming back and forth. I think that we would need to know a little bit more about that before we could answer
that. Okay. Mark Fasano, Winwood. I would take the opportunity to thank Superintendent Copeland for recommending a return to full in-person learning and to urge board members to offer their support. This is the moment for full return for all the reasons cited by Mr. Copeland. I was especially heartened to see that the district's latest weekly round of surveillance testing revealed no infections. This offers strong evidence that our protocols are working. I would particularly like to commend the superintendent for recommending a return before spring break. This will, as Mr. Copeland noted, give the district a week's opportunity to refine its full in-person protocols before resuming the last marking period. This has been a long journey for everyone. I'm looking forward, as I'm sure all of you are, to our children resuming their normal ways of being and to begin the process of recovery from the social and learning losses they've sustained. Next is Katie Daly from Penn Valley. Thank you so much to the administration and board for putting together a much needed plan to return our students to school as soon as possible. It's been nearly a year and every single day matters at this point. I'm also grateful that the parents who are not comfortable sending their children before spring break have the option to switch to a virtual option. Thanks again for Lmsb for a plan to finally return our students to school. Next one who has listed their name and location, Rachel McQuillan, Bala Cynwyd. Thank you for the presented plan and proposal for more in-person education. Our children will benefit in a myriad of valuable ways with this change. As a healthcare provider, I feel confident with the outlined school district plan. Shannon Moyer, Bryn Mawr. Regarding elementary school classrooms that cannot offer 6 feet between students, will masks, breaks, snack breaks take place while seated at those desks?
Terry, I think that they're looking at mask breaks, not at the desk, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Nate Evans, Penn Win. Will kids who switch to at home in elementary be placed with their homeschool class and teacher regardless of class size?
That's probably not going to be the case. If they switch to that, it'll be to an available Lmsd at home, if they're available.
Olivia Thompson, Bryn Mawr. Thank you for following the science and data. Our children are looking forward to seeing their friends in school again. Okay. Blanca Guzman, Bryn Mawr. Kids with allergies and symptoms that are COVID-like should stay at home? Assuming yes.
Yes, if it's a
Howard Sherman, Penn Win. What would it take for the district to consider doing a week of remote full-day instruction after spring break? The Facebook groups are full of people discussing their travel plans for the week, and it is unlikely anyone will cancel. Why set the community up for a bigger spike than necessary?
As we indicated, we've checked with professionals, and we don't believe that that's as much of a concern this time.
Elizabeth Gunderson, Penn Valley. I'd like to express my enthusiastic appreciation and support for the plan for full in-person schooling for elementary students starting the week of March 22nd. With the mitigation measures that Lmsd already has in place, the risk of full-time in-person schooling is minimal and the benefits great. Thank you. Next is somebody gave a name but no comment. Catherine Boggs, Marion Station. Thank you for all the work that went into preparing for this decision in tonight's meeting. I'm so glad to hear that our teachers will be vaccinated this month. Comment is that I would like the board to ensure that, along with our teachers, all administrative and support staff at our schools, as well as our bus drivers, will be included in the group that has access to vaccine by the end of the month.
The vaccines are for all school staff.
Barb Stotner, Narberth. It is time. Please just open the schools already. Thank you. Jen Brasso, Gladwin. Just want to thank Mr. Copeland and the board for bringing forward the timing of the return to full in-person instruction. The parents appreciate the hard work and support of this. Joy English, Penn Win. If families elected Winter Flex, will they be able to elect Winter Flex option 1 month at a time in this spring? Meaning, if they are not comfortable returning after spring break and they want to remain virtual for April, can they return to in-person in May?
I think we have to look at that.
As the district, Jennifer Nagda, Kenwood, as the district established specific guidelines such as a number of confirmed in-school transmissions in a certain period of time for when it would return to hybrid, given that not all parents and families who want vaccines can yet access them, and if not, when will the district do so?
I think if we were to ever get to the point where we were considering a return to hybrid, we would be consulting our health professionals in the area.
Christina Chang, Penn Valley. Thank you, Mr. Copeland, for this recommendation of 5 days, full days of elementary and 4 full days of middle and high school starting the week of March 22nd. I urge the full board to approve this plan. March 12, 2021 will mark 365 days since the start of this pandemic, impacting school closures last spring. Our children will have received only 30 days of in-person education in 12 months. So thank you for the reopening plans. Lower Merion's health and safety plans exceed some other school districts that are open with the rapid testing and 0.1% positivity rate and improved ventilation in all of our schools. Alexandra O'Neill, Winwood. Lmsb at home classes are already large, many at capacity. I understand the need to give hybrid families an option rather than returning full time, but how are you going to do that without further compromising at home class sizes?
We're looking at a variety of ways of handling that.
Would you be adding new teachers for Lmsb at home to accommodate hybrid students who still want to shift to at home? Also, it is concerning that so many teachers do not feel confident in a return between 25 to 43% across the various different levels, yet you are planning to move forward with reopening anyway.
Staffing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Carrie Supple, Monroe Road in Marion Station. What caps will be used for Lmsb at home class size for elementary?
So, you know, just like any time during the course of the year, we might have classes that somewhat exceed class size guidelines by 1 or 2 because students enter late in the year and we don't necessarily reorganize classes when that happens. So this is a fluid situation. We're going to take it on a case-by-case basis, that's the only answer I have right now. But we understand the concern.
Okay. Next is Julia Switzer, Narberth resident, physician and mom to first grader. I'm really happy to hear about the plans in place to return to full-time in-person instruction for our youngest learners. I appreciate the use of the Swiss cheese image and encourage everyone to revisit this. If we all continue to do our part outside of school and support our kids doing theirs while in school, we can be successful in controlling COVID and educating our kids. Masks work, vaccination works. Let's do this. Thank you for all your hard work. Kathy Jordan, Narberth. Thank you for your leadership in developing this thoughtful plan that values our children's engagement with in-person learning. It has clearly been hours of extra work for the staff, and we are incredibly grateful for all their effort. Leah Howard, Penn Win. Thank you to the teachers and administrators for all your hard work during this challenging pandemic. Have you considered a staggering reopening approach with elementary schools fully opening 3/22, but high school and middle schools remaining virtual until the week after spring break because of potential spring break related travel?
I think I've answered that.
Okay. Howard Patak, Bala-Cynwyd. I think the plan is fine, though I do believe it is inconsistent to bring students back in live immediately after spring break. The season change as compared to prior breaks is not the issue, it's travel, and this is the week people plan to travel. Colleen Wortley, Winwood, can you share how many classrooms are at the 5-foot distance from each other and if teachers can truly be 6 feet while teaching a class? How the measurement is taken to get to the 5 feet mid-desk to mid-desk, not edge to edge?
That's probably best to answer at school by the principal.
Okay. There's a question from, some people are putting their name in their where they're from, like well after their comment, so I have to go back. It takes a second. Stacy Wolf, Levering Circle, Bella Kenway. Her comment, which was much earlier, is, will there be lunch and learn online for high schoolers continuing in Lmsb at home?
No, there's going to be the regular sets because of the densification and supervision.
Okay. Danielle Brooks, Bala-Cynwyd, thank you so much for the plan to reopen more fully. My question is about when in-person elementary students may need to quarantine due to possible exposure at school. How will they continue their studies if elementary classrooms are not equipped with live stream? Will it be completely self-paced?
We indicated as absences.
Katie Stellard, Bryn Mawr. Not a question, just an expression of strong support to move this plan forward. Our teachers and staff have been heroes through all this and gone above and beyond the call of duty in unprecedented circumstances. Our kids have shown a resilience beyond their years, but they desperately need the more full-time experience we were able to offer them through this plan for their emotional well-being. We appreciate the board putting this plan forward and look forward to the days ahead when our kids can re-engage in a more consistent way. And next is Teresa Dennis, Marion Station. Why has there been no consideration to following the CDC's guidance, including thresholds for community transmission? I am also disappointed that so little consideration has been given to the teachers' opinions about whether a safe opening is possible. If no safe one, we should take that very seriously. Kate Legge, Winwood, parent of 2 at PWES. Thank you for this plan. It is good to see the children return to school. They need this. I hope there will be a push to allow classes outside for some learning, even at Penguin, which has smaller grounds than other schools. The kids need the social playing of being outside with other kids more than anything else right now. I have one question. How will busing work? In past years at Penguin, the children have waited 30 minutes for their bus. It would be great, but all congregate in one room. That will not work. How will you minimize the amount of time kids are waiting for buses for a large population of students who are not in their class? It is not appropriate to ask these kids to be with K2 and 5th grade altogether and stay silent for those 30 minutes. Has there been thought about changing the bus schedules or keeping children in their classrooms longer?
Again, there has been some thought about staggering some things, but that's a school by school issue.
Les Dernwall, Penn Valley. Thank you to Mr. Copeland and the board for recommending a full in-person return to spring break. We appreciate all the work it has taken for implementing appropriate mitigation strategies, as well as the thoughtful approach of being able to evaluate the full in-person model during the time off during spring break. My children have expressed joy in returning to school and spending more in-person time with their teachers and other students. It is a mental health win. Also, thanks to our amazing teachers who always put their best foot forward to continue to educate our children during this tough time. I can't think of a better way to commemorate the 1-year anniversary than a plan to get our kids back in school where they belong. Lori Bomar, Bala-Cynwyd. Our family is incredibly excited and grateful for the full return to in-person school. Thank you for all your hard work. Maya Rosenberg, Gladwin. According to the CDC guidelines, and as we have seen in other nations who have returned to full in-person, 3 feet is not adequate to prevent in-school transmission, and hundreds of students were sent to quarantine. In the case that a student has to quarantine in the elementary school level, will they be able to Zoom into the class? What about the siblings? Will they have to quarantine? Joe Ringgold, Marion Park neighborhood. I don't understand the wait list for high school students who opted for LMSD at home but want to return in person. Are you saying there's not enough space? I was under the impression that we had the option to return to in-person based on the survey and now the intent to return form. Please clarify.
I didn't quite get all of that. I think that there is fluidity in the high school schedule because of the way it's set up. Was that the question? Did I get that?
Well, the question is not understanding the wait list for high school students who opted for LMSD at home but want to return in person. They're asking, is there easy?
There is none. Because of the way the high school program is delivered, there's not a problem.
Excuse me, Joey in Ardmore. I noticed that the survey of elementary school teachers showed low confidence in the possibility of a safe reopening. Can the panelists comment on this, including the reasons for this reaction, what the district is doing to satisfy teacher concerns?
One of the things we did was we collected not just checkoff data, but asked for specific comments. Those comments were fed to the doctors who were giving a presentation to the teachers. We had a specific staff meeting for that. And each building is going to be working with their staff to do the best they can to help assure staff safety and staff just general mental well-being.
Judith Levine, Alec Kinwood, we thank you for all of your incredible devotion and fortitude in this difficult year. The question is about high school. The current hybrid system balances safety with meeting the needs of a variety of high school students. A full-time return makes distancing impossible and is thus clearly not as safe as the hybrid system. You indicated the majority of elementary families say they likely want this full return, but only a minority of high school families do. We thus respectfully ask the board to consider maintaining the hybrid system at the high school level. Should this not be your decision, we want to put in a strong plea for more time and flexibility in making change of path decisions. 1 week notice does not allow sufficient time to contact medical personnel for advice as needed for students or family members with health conditions. Finally, we still think it would be much wiser for any 4-day return to not occur until 10 days after spring break. Thank you. Dennis Mulder, Ardmore. As new mutations and virus variants that are more infectious develop quickly, the district should be able to change back to a hybrid or remote program in a very short time. Jamie Selway, Haverford. Many thanks for the hard work of Superintendent Copeland and team and fresh leadership from President Klein. This is a solid plan that responds to community feedback in a safe and reasonable fashion. Well done. Hugh Ehrenberg, Penn Valley. I'm sure you have inboxes full of opinions from all sides today. I'd like to congratulate the board on beginning to listen to both and willing to offer full or nearly full in-person instruction. Time is clearly now. The data is mountainous in support and the community is behind you. There will always be those who are fearful, doubtful, hesitant, need more time, worry about this or that. And for those families, the choice is just as easy as it is for those in favor of in-person schooling. They can choose virtual instruction. My children are quite excited to get back to seeing their teachers and having 3D instruction and peer interaction. Please continue to act based on data. Margaret Ing, Ardmore. How close will the student desks be in the high school classrooms?
I believe that was 4 feet, Alexis, is that correct?
It'll depend on the number of students that are in the classroom. Most of them will be 4 or 5 feet though, majority.
I think some of the challenges are the science labs, as I recall.
Yeah, science labs are definitely a challenge. We have some desks outside of the lab tables, depending on how many students return.
Anipriya Shahiri, Malakinwood. Thanks for all the hard work the teachers and staff are putting in for our students. Is the district 100% certain that by March 22nd, every staff member in the district will be vaccinated? As per the February 24th email, Dr. Rubin recommended that reopening discussion be done in mid-March, early April. I really want the school to be reopened fully, and I think post-spring break was a good time.
No, I can't. What we've been told is everybody will be vaccinated by the end of March. Let me just say, however, based on the numbers of people who have already been vaccinated, we think we can get, I don't know, can I say virtually everyone who's not been vaccinated who wants to be vaccinated in the first round? Is that fair, Megan?
That's fair.
Stacy Walensky, Kinwood. I'm a parent of a Kinwood Elementary School student. I would like to be, sorry. If so many teachers do not feel comfortable opening full, why are we? Some fields are already limited in space. How are the students supposed to run around and play for recess if they are more filled with tents and pods? Kinwood and Bala Kinwood is an example. Also, how will it be assured that students are not confined and able to run around and move their mask breaks? How are the students going to have gym at the elementary level if the gym is being used for cafeteria in bad weather? They can't have it in the classroom. Are the kids going to be able to have any talk at lunch? They need to have some social.
I think again, those are questions that are best answered by the principal. But I think Mrs. Schaefer said that it's not going to be the same as school March 2019. The mitigation processes will limit some of what we considered a normal school day.
Okay. Vanessa Cohen, Bala Kinwood, thanks to the district administration, teachers, and staff for all of their hard work over the year. 2 questions. Is there a plan to stagger drop-off pickup times, considering a lot of families might opt to drive their kids to school instead of having them use school transportation? Is the spring pathway decision binding for the remainder of the school year? Is there any flexibility to make a change in either direction from remote to in-person or vice versa?
Well, we certainly hope that those situations don't occur. That would mean that there's some significant changes in what we're seeing. In terms of the drop-off, again, some schools are looking at that.
Christina Hahn, Bryn Mawr. If the numbers switch to at home are possible, is there a plan to add whole classes, teachers, in order to protect at-home class sizes that are already at capacity?
We have to see what the numbers are like.
Darren Newman, Villanova. Have you considered a full-time in-person start the week of April 12th following an asynchronous week, the week following spring break like was done after winter break? If so, why are you proposing to start the week prior to spring break? Why the rush now? Edward Dennis, I think you answered that. If you,
yep.
Edward Dennis, Marion Station. I have not heard one good reason why the school district is not following CDC guidelines, which clearly state that 6 feet distancing is required, not simply best efforts, for communities with our level of transmission. Orange.
Well, again, we've consulted with regional experts and well.
Madeline Patak, Bala Kinwood. Very excited to go back like we did before COVID-19. But it is hard because we're going to be closer to each in the class. That makes me concerned. Jasmine Evans Penwing. You have only been conducting rapid tests on teachers, student athletes, and students with special needs. Kids are mostly asymptomatic, so how can you assert that you are not seeing cases in schools without some kind of surveillance testing? Will you commit to doing some kind of baseline testing of all kids who are at classrooms at distances less than CDC recommendations of 6 feet at our current community levels? What other methods will you use to determine if the new mitigation strategies at full capacity are working, other than just hoping for low prevalence and relying on the presumption of low transmission during previous hybrid mitigation methods?
We've talked about of expanding our insurance testing, and we're working with the folks from CHOP and OPH on ways to do that. We are going to expand to other close contact activities beyond athletics, as we indicated, the performances, the music, robotics, those kinds of things.
Okay. Michelle Higgins, Winwood. If an elementary school student needs to quarantine at home, can the student still participate in the class virtually? Okay. Sarah Kahn, how will the district handle situations where children's masks are not fully covering their nose, mouth, despite reminders from teachers? This is a regular occurrence and will be problematic when 6 feet of distancing is no longer enforced.
The information we've gotten from our staff suggests that there's really good compliance with masks. And when I walk through the buildings, I see very strong compliance with masking.
Bettini Gunya, Penn Valley. Will it be possible for a student who is in the full in-person return option to switch to virtual if they are not comfortable with the new in-person situation, decreased distancing, etc.
Certainly for the high school, that's possible.
Maya Mearson, Wynwood, you are stating, while there's no risk-free way to fully reopen our schools, they are not reporting significant in-school transmission. Based on your data, what is the risk in numbers incurred by a student at elementary and high school levels attending a full in-person setting? What is considered a significant versus insignificant in-school transmission? How will you identify close contacts of an index case in a situation where students come in contact with multiple other students throughout the day? How will you educate those in quarantine? How will your teacher absences be handled? Elementary school option you are offering is far from equitable. Are there any options letting the children, are there any options stay with the original classroom? As you yourself alluded to on a number of occasions, the pandemic situation is constantly changing and requires certain flexibility to be dealt with. Throughout this year, there have been last-minute changes to attendance plans, hybrid design metrics being followed.
Terry, do you want to answer the question on the tracing?
Yeah, I believe that question was for the elementary students, was it? Or it wasn't limited
yes,
to?
I think it was, yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, we're planning on having assigned seating in the elementary, at the elementary level, and contact tracing isn't especially difficult to do when there's assigned seating. We're still minimizing transitions and from class to class, and it would be assigned seating as lunch as well. So contact tracing at the elementary level is pretty simple. It becomes more challenging at the secondary level, particularly at high school. But it can be done. It's a little more challenging.
Nancy Polychronopoulou, Balakinwood. This plan feels very unfair to the elementary school families who are not yet ready to take the risk. These families are practically not given the option, since the only alternative is to have the kid change teacher and classroom so close to the end of the year. The plan feels especially unfair since we seem to be reopening earlier than CDC recommends based on the case counts. Please reconsider adding a flex option, although understandably is difficult to implement.
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression that we weren't concerned about those families who are in hybrid, who liked hybrid and wanted to stay in hybrid. It becomes a staffing space issue and some forced choices.
Elizabeth Howard, in reviewing the Lmsb COVID case counts, most spikes occurred after a holiday. Halloween, Thanksgiving, and to a lesser extent, winter break all brought increased Lower Merion School District cases. I'd like Lmsb not to consider not reopening the day right after Easter, a traditional family gathering day. I'm not convinced that warmer weather does provide significant decline in the virus based on the very high number of cases occurring in the Midwest this summer. Maybe delaying reopening after Easter spring break will only have an impact on the COVID anxiety level of community members and not the actual increase in cases. That is still something, as the district's very successful mitigation efforts will necessarily be diminished when we lose the 6 feet of social distancing. In Hao Ching, Penn Valley, is there a plan to have structured outdoor instruction? The weather will be optimal for that. Our preschooler has been experiencing instruction primarily outside since October. Micah Sneed, Ardmore. I've been asking since September, so I'll ask one more time before I give up on the school year and look ahead to the next. Please detail the functions of the school district which are required by law, statute, or funding, and show other functions are optional. For example, will there be permanent changes to the number of absences students may take? Will planning for core curriculum be prioritized over specials? It'd be great for communication if the administration could detail the things that must be done and how they are strategically addressed before adding on optional services and resources.
Was that an attendance question?
I think it was just a question asking, I think attendance was one example, in terms of, it sounded like they were asking, what are the things you have to do, and prioritize those before you add any optional services that aren't required. I don't know that there's a specific question to be answered, but that's what the question was. My feed started at 9:08 with the first comment of Adam Olenek. I'm getting text messages that there are messages before that.
You want me to take them? I will.
They're not in my feed though.
Want me to take them, Mr. Copeland?
Sure.
Okay, Laura Lmsb in Narberth, can you please say more about how lunch will be handled? I understand this will vary by school, but this is an obvious public health weak point as masks cannot be worn. Without knowing more about how lunch will be handled, it is difficult to judge whether it is safe to have all students in school full day. Will vaccination be required for LMSD staff and teachers?
So as I indicated, that's really, we're trying to prioritize the 6 feet at lunch, and the vaccines will not be required. They're still authorized under emergency use, so they could not be required.
Okay, I just logged on. I'm logged onto with a different device now. I now see the comments.
Okay, do you want to take it on with Mr. Jacobson?
Yeah. Rob Jacobson, Balakinuit, is there a rollback plan?
I spoke to
them. Okay. There was one from, I think I read that one already, or the comment, or I'll check. Katie Calabrese Winwood, thank you so much for your hard work. Our family is one that's happy at this new development. Can you tell us the length of the elementary school day so we can plan? Or is it still to be determined?
Same, it will go back to the original time. So it'll end at 3:35, and I think we begin at 8:55.
Okay.
Well, don't take my word for it. That's just what I think.
Lacey Gladwin, does the kindergarten schedule change at all moving forward?
Yes. Jen, what's the?
Yes, the kindergarten will be restored to the original schedule. So the morning session would be 9 a.m. to 11:50, and the afternoon session would be 12:45 to 3:35. So they'd have the same dismissal as grades 1 through 5.
Okay. So I don't see an address. Next is Naveet Miller Gladwin. Thank you for prioritizing the needs of our children and returning to full-time in-person instruction. How will specials and programs like Challenge work? Will elementary students move to different classrooms for these activities?
Specials will most likely remain in their homeroom class.
Carol Ann Gosweiler, Ardmore. Good evening, LMSD School Board. I write to you today to urge you to vote no for the proposed 3/22 reopening in favor of a full return only once the staff that have expressed interest in vaccination have not only received those vaccinations, but have also been afforded the 2 weeks post-vaccination to allow for full effectiveness. Pushing for an arbitrary early reopening is an insult to the health and safety of the teachers and staff that we should be working together to protect. Give our students a chance for consistency by waiting until our teachers have a chance to be fully protected. Lynn Zach Villanova. It appears that if a hybrid student requests to move to at home, that will be granted without hesitation. Class sizes not be considered prior to permitting a potential mass move to at home. I think you already answered that. I think that one was answered. Guy Cave Winwood. I urge the board to vote yes. I urge the board to vote yes to the plan to reopen on March 22nd. It is already long overdue. The British Medical Journal recently concluded that there is no evidence that closing schools helps reduce transmission, and confirmed there is a lot of evidence that school closure is deeply harmful to children. The school district must stop undervaluing the importance of in-person education and vote yes to reopening on March 22nd. Frida Dreschler from Penn Valley. I have 2 elementary school kids enrolled in the LMSD at home program this year. Very disappointed to hear the school district's plan of crowding kids who don't feel comfortable going back in person to the existing LMSD at-home classes. While I fully understand why many families still don't feel comfortable going back full-time in person, we are definitely one of them. The school district is putting the burden of solving this puzzle on the only group that has been consistent throughout this whole process, which are the families that chose the LMSD at-home program. The only reasonable arrangement is to recruit new teachers and to add new classes to the LMSD at-home program rather than randomly jamming more kids into the existing classes, which are already close to the class size cap. This would be very unfair to the family who made the commitment early on back in August. Rebecca Wall, Villanova. If there is an exposure in class at the elementary level, how will the quarantine look? Will there be a virtual learning for a full day for these students? What if these students have siblings? How will that be handled?
I think that would be a case-by-case situation.
Catherine Boggs, Marion Station, thank you for the work that went into preparing for this decision in tonight's meeting. Robin Knight, Winwood, please vote for returning to full-time school. The kids need it. Doug Spodek, Bala-Cynwyd, if a student opts to attend in person, then is uncomfortable with the in-school situation, will they have the flexibility to go virtual instead? I think you've answered that. Ken Starr, Winwood, I must ask how and why you are now eliminating flex. As it stands now, you've given families who are presumably worried about current risks the ability to opt in and out of flex on a monthly basis. This is based on current data and current risk. Now you're raising the level of risk, and for many of these families, I presume level of discomfort, and eliminating their ability to participate in the one program that made it more equitable for people who didn't want to leave their home school altogether.
I may not have been clear on that. The curriculum folks talk about the status of flex.
So flex will end March 22nd, and when it ends, elementary will have the option of going either full-time in person or to LMSD at home. Middle school will have the option of going full-time in person or going to, we're calling it middle school spring remote. And then at the high school level, they'll continue with the option of LMSC at home or a full return. So on March 22nd, we'll ask parents to make the decision to tell us what option they're going to choose.
Stephanie or Benedis, Winwood, whether families prefer full-time, in-person, hybrid, or virtual, I think one thing that everyone would agree on is that we would not be able to get where we are today without our wonderful teachers. The presentation indicated that teachers who have not already received the vaccine will be vaccinated over the next week. As such, even with one dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine, these teachers will not be considered fully vaccinated until after March 22nd. Fully vaccinated is defined as 2 weeks after last vaccine dose. Why can't we defer opening until the teachers are fully vaccinated, as that is a quick win that will add a significant layer to our overall risk mitigation plan and should increase our teachers' full in-person return confidence level?
Neither the district nor the experts that we've been dealing with have said that vaccines were a metric that was required before we went to reopening. It's great that it's going to happen, but it was our recommendation that we not necessarily wait for that to happen. A week ago, or a little over a week ago, it didn't even look like we were going to have vaccines until sometime in April or May for staff. So it's great that it's happening, but it was never considered a must before you return.
Okay. Next is Joy Hoffman, Winwood. We are so excited for this full opening. Thank you for all of your hard work. Next, Regine St. Germain, Penwin. Do you plan to limit the size of LMSD at home classes? If so, what will be the standard? I think you've answered that. Rebecca Starr, Winwood, based on the answers given and shared in the teacher survey, the overwhelming majority of teachers stated they do not feel confident that a full reopening is safe. Why aren't we trusting them or respecting their insight? types of data is given to schools, keep schools closed, not to reassure us about a full reopening. Based on what elementary school teachers said in that survey, with the shortened specials time, responsibility for arrival/dismissal, and all the other hats they're wearing, how can you eliminate their Fridays? They need and deserve that time for things including, but not limited to, checking in with parents, holding meetings with parents, small group instruction that can't happen because of 6 feet from students, mental health support, prep time, etc.
I think Dr. Godioso spoke to that.
Peter Solderich, Haverford. Springfield, Delaware County is going back to 4 full days next week. However, for secondary education, they've altered their hours so that students end the day at 2 p.m. and eat a late lunch at home or off school property. Why aren't you pursuing schedule changes to help eliminate massless times entirely in any grade levels? Both facilities provide details about how each classroom's ventilation is being monitored, especially now that more students will be inhabiting each space. Understanding that each building is different, what is the minimum classroom distance that your calculations show you will be allowing in classrooms? You must have done these calculations by now, and they should be known now by the board before voting. Finally, why is the board comfortable voting on a plan where important per school logistical details like minimum spacing, mealtime policies, and transportation logics have not been communicated to parents and may not, in fact, even have been completed?
Well, they have been completed. One of the missing elements, of course, is knowing exactly how many students are going to come back to each specific space. And it's also going to change from class to class, where one class might have a large enrollment, another class might have a small one. But each building has its specific classroom dimensions, and if you attend the sessions, you'll know. I think we've said that there are a few classrooms at the elementary level that are 3 feet, most are 4 or 5, and some are even 6 feet.
Hadash Sheffer, Kinwood, how will teachers support quarantine students to make sure they stay current on classwork? I think you've answered that. I see lunch, Cynthia Jacobstein. I see lunch as a higher risk time due to the need to remove masks. Have you considered asking parents to assist with observing smaller groups of kids at lunchtime so that they can be more spread out? I suspect many parents are already vaccinated.
Well, as I indicated, we're bringing in cafeteria recess aides, and we're contracting with Right at School.
Adam and Caroline Cutler, Winwood, will Lmsb be allowing extracurricular clubs to meet in person safely as you've allowed sports to do? Will you offer extracurricular clubs and activities the same COVID testing opportunities that athletes have been afforded to ensure safe gatherings? And if not, why are you continuing to treat athletics differently from other extracurricular activities?
I think I've answered that.
Daniel Grin, Winwood. Some families are sitting comfortably with the current flex learning model, which has allowed students to remain connected to their assigned teachers in classrooms. We are apprehensive about the return to school, but similarly don't wish to shift Lmsb at home so late in the year, given that our children have a good rapport with the assigned teachers and cohort. Is there a way to preserve this model for those of us with reservations about the return to full in-person instruction? If there is enough interest expressed in the feedback form, will this option be offered? Will there be a place in the form to indicate this, or should we indicate it free form in the comments?
It's very unlikely that we would have a hybrid form process within the regular day. It's my hope that once folks who have experienced the hybrid have met with their individual school principals, that they'll feel that that's a good option for them.
Okay. Stacy Greenberg, Bella Kinwood. What time will elementary school end? Are there snack breaks for elementary school kids or just lunch? Thanks for your efforts in moving toward full-time in person.
The day ends at 3:35. I do not believe that there's going to be snacks. Dr. Godioso?
I think at this time they were not doing snacks. We've been focusing on lunch, and I think any of the safety concerns regarding snacks, the students would have to be outside and distant. So I think those are some of the things yet being worked out, and we would do it with the guidance of health and safety. So at this time, I don't believe that we are.
Jennifer Chalal, Winwood. I fully support the full opening option as proposed. Lisa Maslow, Bala Kinwood. If a student needs to quarantine due to an exposure, how will they access their education during that time? Will they have the option to Zoom into their class so as not to miss out on instruction? I think that was answered. Is a return to 5-day, excuse me, no hotel there. Susan Sophie, Belmont Hills. Thank you for moving forward with a plan to return to full-time in person. I have a request to please consider the format and the content of these plans. Date, what is published is poorly organized, difficult to follow, and requires looking at multiple sources to piece together answers. This is a, I'm going to try to read this as best as I can. This is a Rotarian, but I've heard of talking personally. Please address the issue. It will do much to calm fears and help families make decisions. Sorry, did the best I could. Brett Sandler, Marion Station. Given that elementary school parents must decide by Sunday night, within only a week before school will reopen, when will a decision be made on the need for a flex option, therefore changing the elementary school day from 4 days a week to 5?
I think right now we're committed to a 5-day week.
Colleen Wortley, Winwood. At the elementary school level, 5 days in person, how will that allow any deep cleaning of the classrooms and common spaces? How will students attend school if there's no virtual option if they're having to quarantine after an exposure?
The deep cleaning aspect that we were concerned about way back in August, September appears not to be the same situation. Having said that, as I mentioned before, we have the ability to do the cleaning that we need to do, not only with our expanded use of the company that we've brought in, but our custodians. Terry, do you want to address that at all?
Just that we have a large number of electrostatic sprayers, which are used with vital oxide, and they're capable of sanitizing the classrooms and other spaces, even those that can't be wiped down by hand, very quickly and very effectively. And it doesn't require a long period of time to do that.
Okay. I was able to match up somebody's comment with their name and where they're from. Michelle Tran, Penn Valley. I would like to thank the board and superintendent for tonight's meeting. I would like to stress that I am 100% for in-person schooling for all the grades K to 12. My daughter struggled immensely last spring, and while she's doing better this year, her mental health is still an issue. It has been 1 year, and the families who want in-person should have that option, just as those who want the virtual option have that whole virtual option. Okay. Next is I think I may have read this, but I apologize. Missy Levin, Winwood. If my elementary child has to quarantine due to exposure or is ill, will they be able to Zoom into class? If not, how will they be kept up to date with the material in classroom? And will students be eating in the classroom in elementary school or the cafeteria?
Well, in some cases, both the cafeteria and in classrooms. And I think I've answered that.
Alyssa Turk, Marion Station, Bala Kinwood Middle School. My son is 6th grade in Lmsb at home. He has autism and has a stable setup now with supports. How can I be assured he will get similar supports in person? Will I be able to get this information before Sunday night? Also, how will the wait list be prioritized for middle schoolers moving from Lmsb at home to person? Is it first come, first serve?
Kimberly, can you answer the question? Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
Sure.
I apologize.
This is a parent of a child with special needs. Wants to know how that child will get similar supports in person, and how will she be able to get that information before Sunday night, and how will the wait list be prioritized for middle schoolers moving from Lmsb at home to in person?
Yeah, so the special education supports are going to continue to be provided as per the student's IEP. And for the students who are receiving in-person instruction, those services will be provided with their direct service providers. Again, dependent upon how it's written in the IEP, whether it's push in or pull out, but that'll be back towards what's written in the student's IEP. If a family is choosing to switch between Lmsd at home and in person, we'll have to look at what those supports and services are to determine who will be providing those. But what I can say is regardless of what option you choose, students will be provided with what's listed within their IEPs.
Okay, Amy Clipston, Bryn Mawr. So thank you for planning this return to in-person instruction. We have 2 children in Lower Merion schools and are 100% in favor of this plan. Sarah Coffiner, we support a full return for elementary students. These young children need to be in school full-time or as soon as possible, just like has already taken place in Radnor School District and other districts in the region. Risk can be safely and reasonably mitigated. Alexis Shapiro, Quinwood, I'd like to thank the board and Superintendent Copeland for their hard work with this plan and urge the board to adopt it. I would also like to know if secondary schools will be able to eventually move to 5 in-person days as we make our way through spring, if the mitigations continue to work and the opportunity for more in-person days becomes apparent. Middle schoolers really need a full week. Davey Scheller, Bryn Mawr, I want to commend the board for reopening schools in person for the Lower Merion students. It is such an important step for kids to move towards some semblance of normalcy and start to put the trauma of the pandemic behind them so they can start to heal. David Waldman, Bryn Mawr, while understanding the desire to get the children back into school as soon as possible, seeing the bumps in cases after all of the vacation breaks, wouldn't it be prudent to push back this opening until the week after spring break and return to instruction on April 12th? Next one with an address is Chanel Steinagel, Haverford. Very concerned about the potential lack of 6-foot spacing, but there doesn't really seem to be an option you are offering when elementary school students would be reassigned to a new teacher through Lmsb at home. Leslie Doyle, Penn Wynn, first of all, thank you. Our children need this. Secondly, will there be a short-term virtual option for families traveling towards spring break? What appears to be the last comment, but I do want to double check. Mary Ann Beachy, Kinwood, thank you for the thoughtful presentation on the plan to return to more in-person learning. As a parent of 2 elementary age students, this could not come soon enough, and I am so happy to see the date of the proposal has been moved up to March 22nd. Kudos to the team. Thank you for following the science. I urge the board to vote on this proposal, in favor of this proposal, and to allow our students to get back to more in-person learning as soon as possible, like a majority of our neighboring districts have already done, with sincere gratitude. Okay, I will, still making sure there weren't names and addresses separated by comments, but other than that, I believe that concludes public comment.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think there has been some discussion around elementary school students who quarantine, just quarantine, not as a regular situation. Is that right? Have we been having that discussion?
Yes.
Yes. Correct.
That's what I thought. It's not the best situation, but I understand that the administration is looking at that as a possibility for elementary school students who's quarantine only.
Yes. Ms. Klein, I believe that concludes all the public of.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Roos. I know reading those it's quite a lot of work, so I do appreciate that. Mr. Orlando, could you read tonight's recommended actions then?
Yes. The administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approve the amended Lower Merion School District Health and Safety Plan.
Short and sweet. Just to clarify that this is the vote to move towards the full in-person as we've been discussing tonight. Do I have a motion to approve?
So
moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. LaPera, can you please take a roll call for this action item?
Yes. Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Ms. Finger,
Yes.
Dr. Gilbert,
Yes.
Ms. Kalish,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Mooring,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Ms. Ackman,
Yes.
and Ms. Klein.
Yes.
9 are in favor, 0 are against. Motion passes.
Great. Thank you. And then, Mr. Orlando, can you do the following two?
Sure, I'm gonna do the next two.
Mhm.
Administration. Mic off. Okay. Administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approve the 6th Amendment to rated school contract for midday support for the terms of the amendment, which is under solicitor's review. And the other motion is the administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approve the attached 3rd Amendment to the Guaranteed Energy Saving Contract with Reynolds Energy Service, Inc., Site Logic, in the amount of $64,526.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, I don't see any. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? No. Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Ms. LaPera, can you please share our upcoming meeting dates?
Yes. We have the Monday, March 15th, regular business board meeting at 8 p.m. And then we have the following committee meetings. March 10th, ad hoc committee meeting for equity and anti-racism at 7 p.m. The March 11th, facilities purchasing committee meeting at 8:30 a.m. The March 17th, communications committee meeting at 7 p.m. The March 24th, finance operations budget review. That's at 8:30 a.m. And then the March 25th legislative forum at 7 p.m. They will all be held via Zoom.
Great, thank you, Ms. LaPera. I'm going to follow up on that legislative committee meeting. I know that there have been a lot of concern regarding the PSSA testing this year. And I'd like to encourage everyone who would like the PSSAs to be waived this school year to reach out to your state legislators and the governor, as they are the ones who can request a waiver from the federal government. Otherwise, the district is legally required to administer them. So I encourage you also to join us at that legislative committee meeting on March 25th, where several of our local legislators will be joining us. I also want to encourage everyone to continue to share your concerns and suggestions through community comments. You may notice that individual email addresses are now available on the website. However, I do believe that there is a lot of value that comments are shared with all of the board members. And the emails that go to community comments are seen by all of us and forwarded to all of us. So I highly recommend that. As always, I'd like to remind everyone that tomorrow morning is the March ISC Hot Topic meeting at 9:30. It will be an update on the new middle school and also the shift toward the new K-4 and 5-8 programming. It will be held via Zoom, and you can find more information in your school newsletters. And before we adjourn, I'd just like to remind everyone that if we want to keep our schools open, we need to recommit ourselves to our protocols in school and out of school. We can't let our guards down now. So thank you all and good night. The meeting is adjourned.